close this. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating today. Very excited. Very unusual format that we're in here. We love being in the big room with everyone where we can see each other and talk with each other. It's been a tough 3 months. Anyway, I hope that you're all well, and I hope that you're all dealing with this pandemic as best as possible. We have been doing municipal audits through the past 3 months, and it's been, a wave. And so we thought it was really important. The key factor of this discussion is talking about how we're going to prepare the audit this year, how we're going to be able to come in and audit. And we're just sharing with you experiences that we had, and then we are allowing enough time that we can have feedback from the audience. So without further ado, we'll start with we're starting with Valerie. Valerie's going to talk about our experience with remote auditing in our municipalities and how we see this playing out in the school arena this summer.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining us in this format. I guess this has become everybody's new norm of these panel discussions and Zoom meetings. So one of the things we decided when we were talking about normally how we handle this session and how we want to go forward for this school year is really to sort of open the discussion with all of our school board clients on how Nisivoccia has been working through learning and actually accomplishing a remote audit. When the pandemic started, although our firm and accountants were technically essential, we chose to close down our offices and basically send all of our staff to work from home. One of the things we wanted to discuss was then how are we going to accomplish the auditing that we need to do with everyone not in buildings, not at client sites, and not in our offices. Fortunately for Nisivoccia, we had the technology in place, so it was a seamless transition for us to bring everybody to the remote side where we could get the information. We then worked with most of our municipal clients. Basically, it became on the fly, which was why we wanted to connect with everybody before we started on how we can get access to the records remotely and limit our on-site auditing. Obviously, our staff was unable to, until recently, get out into the field. However, we feel that's going to continue throughout the summer in that we really we're following CDC guidelines for our staff. And you're all working through your districts, how you're going to open your buildings, your own CDC allowable numbers, that really having us in your face and part of your count is not something you're all considering. So what we've sort of done is it's a twofold piece. We're sort of splitting our audits. Will be certain things that will be done remotely and certain things that will need to be done on site. So we're kind of revamping. You're all familiar with our client list that we normally prepare for you. We've sort of revamped that list towards those, and we're going to go over that later in the presentation. But the reality is there's not only will we need to access information remotely, we have the secure servers for things to be sent up to us. We have multiple things that can be done that way. But what we need, and we've been working with some of the software vendors, because what we found on the municipal side is access to the records through our software. We can get access to the software. I know we did one of our polling survey questions was to ask you which software you utilize, because CDK has offered to give us basically the program, which then any client that's utilizing CDK can give us a backup copy, and we can see the reports and things of that nature. We're working with CSI, and we're trying to connect with Systems 3000 to see if that's a possibility. Or the alternative is that all of those reports will need to be run and then can be uploaded. The other piece so that we can analyze a lot of that data remotely. The pieces that we're finding difficult and unable to do remotely, and will probably need some on-site testing, is areas of student activity records, vouchers, your IEPs and child study records. So that being said, we're thinking kind of outside the box on how we can accomplish those things. We started reaching out to the food service vendors, and those of you that have Mascios, they were going to connect with the districts that have Mascios, and Mascios is actually offering to send us the boxes first to our offices, and then once we've finished our auditing of those records, they would come and get them back and then give them to the school districts. So most of your vendors are trying to be helpful, which has been, very accommodating to us and very helpful for us to accomplish this remote auditing piece. As we said with the municipals, it was sort of a trial and error. So we were constantly working out kinks and working out things. So taking that knowledge and now applying it forward to school audits so that we can eventually accomplish those audits. Then what we also feel is there will be a need for us to be on site, because obviously your vouchers are not electronically, or IEPs, whatever we need to look at. So we will need to come on site, but we're trying to change the way we do that auditing on site. So it's sort of going to be a give and take on how we kind of work. So the audit that you're used to, where we kind of come in and we're there for 2 weeks and it's a full team, is probably not the model you're going to see this summer for these audits and into the fall. It's going to be more of a hybrid that we're hoping that cooperation between us and each of the districts helps that hybrid come out and work for all of us, so that we can stay on task, get your reports done, and finalize them within the required timelines. I probably want to jump over to Mon for a little bit. I can always come back and talk about how we've sort of have sorted through that client list that we usually give you in your packets and sort of revamped it to kind of show you what would be stuff that we could receive remotely versus what stuff we will probably envision needing to be on site for.
Okay, Mon, before you begin, I forgot to mention that we selected some very pointed polling questions so that we can plan accordingly. We want to know how many people will allow us to come into your work site to do the testing that we need to do, and was very happily surprised that a lot of people were on board. I think as of yesterday, we had 24 or 25 people who had responded, and at least half of them said yes. So today we're pressing it that we can get more answers. And so if you're looking for CPE credit for today's seminar, we have that available, and you will have to answer all the polling questions. So I think we have 3, 4, or 5. We combined a few of them. But please answer those polling questions. It helps us today to know how many people will allow us in the building, how many people are receiving CARES Act money. Those questions were very pointed to help us try to figure out how we're going to conduct these audits for the summer.
And I believe we might have a first polling question coming up, Mon. Yep. So if you could assist us with this polling question so that we can make sure that we can fulfill our CDC guidelines along with your own.
I think we need 20 more people.
Yep.
Come on.
Well, some of those people might be our own staff, so.
Right. And 2 people in one place.
Right. So, and I saw there was a question, one of the clients posted that, yes, while some of them are yes, it might be on a limited location. That's the type of information that we need to coordinate specifically with your district to make sure that how you're working through your CDC requirements and how our numbers will impact and what we can do to make either additional accommodations and or work more in our office, have records delivered. So we will work with specific districts that are struggling with being able to give us ample space and keep our social distance and your social distance.
We have one question saying how many of your staff would be here?
We're probably envisioning it to not be the full team at any one time. We probably will have some people testing on site while others are in our offices or at their homes working. And then it might flip. Some of those people who were doing the testing might come back to their homes or our office, and some of those other people will come in. But I don't believe it will be most of the time that full team you're used to seeing at every day. But we will work those out specifically with each client before we arrive.
Awesome.
So I guess that's. Okay.
I'm going to put up the list. Everybody can you guys see the list?
Yeah.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. I miss seeing everybody in one place and chatting with everyone. And just to add to what Val has said earlier, we during all this past couple months, we had to really think outside the box to get our municipal audits done. And our clients and our staff have both been very helpful in coming up with ideas to try to accomplish that. And, some of our clients were able to provide us access into their software so that we don't need to email them every time we need an additional report. We've managed to be able to, send them a list of things that we need. They put it in boxes, leave it in a conference room for, 24 to 48 hours. And then we schedule our staff, either we send 1 or 2 people there for one day just to do the testing, voucher testing, receipts testing, anything that you really we need to get our hands on because they're not electronic.
Hey,
and I know.
Sorry to interrupt you. There was a question that anything that you can send electronically, such things as the vouchers, we will gladly take them electronically and keep ourselves off site. So if that's a possibility, we will gladly take that. There's a question about that.
Yeah, I know that with the municipalities, their, I guess, IT is not as up to date as a lot of our schools are. So I know a lot of our schools, their software allow for them to have electronic purchasing, electronic requisition, approval, and scanning in all the, the quotes, the invoices and such. So if you're already doing that, I don't see a problem with, as long as you give us access to view all those documents, I think that will, make both our lives easier. And as Val had mentioned before, we're envisioning that we are going to come in the summer months, probably latter part of July through August before school starts. And unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know whether, there's talk of the virus coming back in the fall along with the flu season. So nobody knows what's going to happen. So we're trying to plan our audit so that we can be on site at your district to do the testing while there's minimal people around. So we've rearranged this list that we normally give you, and I'm sure everybody is familiar with this list, and we will provide that to you ahead of time into kind of 3 sections. Section where are the things that we will need for summer testing. And then in one section, all the reports that we will need for the audit. And then another section that all the miscellaneous stuff, for example, the staff schedules, the MD&A updates and stuff that it's not as important, but we will need eventually, but kind of put those on the back burner until we can get the audit done. So I'm just gonna go over this list really briefly. So the summer testing, this is, these reports here are CSI reports. And of course, for your district, we're going to tailor to your specific reports that you use for your accounting software. So these are some of the, reports that we need check register so that we can pull our scope for voucher testing, expenditure reports, receipts report, vendor history so that we can do a bid test, purchase order if you're closed, and then accounts payable analysis also if you're close. Because we don't want to duplicate any effort. So if you're not close for the year, then it doesn't make sense for us to review your open purchase order list. And then a list of some general items, your bank recs, your budgets. I'm not gonna, go over every single item, but let's see. So something that we think that we can for sure test during the summer months is payroll. So we listed all the reports that we normally need for payroll. Another thing is student activities. And I know sometimes we, for summer audits that we come in for, we might have a difficult time getting these boxes from the schools because at the end of June, the secretaries leave and nobody have access to the box, and then we have to come back in the fall to get those boxes. So I would suggest maybe reaching out to your school secretary who handle these records and giving them a heads up and saying that, hey, when before you leave, if they can send over the boxes. And even if they don't have them reconciled through June, if we have through May, that will help us out a lot. Transportation, food service, Val touched upon that before. We just really need to get the food service box. So whether we can work with the food service vendor to get the box to our office, or they can deliver the box to your office over the summer instead of in the fall, that would be great. And ASA TRS, I don't think this should be any problem because you would have already done that in the fall last year. So we would just need all the electronic files, and then so that we can pick our scope and pull all the records that we need. And as far as the IEPs, I know a lot of districts have like an electronic database now, and some of our staff have been able to gain access to that electronic database so that we don't need to look at the physical IEPs, we can look at the electronic IEPs. So if you have that available and we haven't utilized that in the past, this would be a good option, I think.
Okay.
Hi, Mom. We have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Catherine, you could go ahead and ask your question. Just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. It was answered by one of the panelists regarding, I just wanted to know if we could get access to the documents we were looking at as we were listening, because I always make all these notes in the margin. I'm very prolific with notes. So thank you.
Yep, I was able to send it to Kathy, but if we want to send it to the entire audience, we can do that. I don't have the list, Michaela does. But I think this is a good point. So obviously for the coronavirus pandemic audits, it's going to be a challenge on both sides. And I think you know that Nisivoccia has always been proactive. We developed the list. The in-charge will reach out to you and see exactly how many things we're going to be able to accomplish in the summer months. If we do the number of clients that we have times the number of days that we might need in each client, we probably won't get to every single one, but we are going to do our best to do that. I don't want to, we'll talk about this after each interval, but it's more incumbent than it's ever been that we have as much information ahead of time when Heidi's going to go into the audit phase, that we really need those things to be prepared, because it used to be that we would come in for a week and maybe we were getting reports throughout the week, maybe on the Friday. We really need to have things ahead of time. So again, we work with you, and we're going to do everything we can individually to facilitate the audit, to make decisions about things that kind of get us tripped up along the way so that we can keep them moving. And you do know that when you start something and you don't finish, Like every time you touch it and feel it takes more time, more time, more time. So we do that on a regular basis, and we're going to be trying to get through things on a very efficient basis this year. And again, you know, it's just us working with each other and communicating with each other. I do see that there will be a little bit of, you know, partners are always involved. The in-charge pretty much communicates with you. We don't know how much on-site time they're going to have, but we'll figure that out as we go. We figured we would do phase 1, which is just what Juan talked about, trying to get certain audit procedures finished over the summer months. And then we go into September, not knowing if you're going to open, not knowing if you're going to open and then close in November. All those unknowns, we don't know. So we have to just keep moving along with the plan, and we will modify the plan as situation permits. So without further ado, Heidi, would you like to talk about the things we're going to need for the audit?
You did have another raised hand. It was a mic, so if you'd like to speak, we'd be happy to answer your question. Okay, well, we would be happy to entertain that at a later point in the presentation. So I'm going to talk about the audit, and like Kathy said, it's really important that we have these reports, especially these reports, which are the key reports that we need to write the financial statements ready and that you're closed out. As we've talked in the past, we find it's a lot easier if you physically close out. I know some people like to give us, would like us to have journal entries provided, and then you'll close out with those journal entries, but it's a lot easier for us to give you entries to post to a closed trial balance that you'll post in the next year. We have no issues with that. But sometimes when we make those adjustments, they're to a specific account, and when we're posting revenue or expenditure account, when we're posting to the GL, it's kind of difficult to do that. So this is a sample of CSI printouts. We will provide you with the specific ones for your specific software, whether that be CDK, Edmunds, Systems 3000. And then below the printouts, we also would like to have the different bank reconciliations for the different accounts and the bank statements. And then also your year-end transfer report. And please just make sure that if there's any transfers above that 10%, that you reach out to the county superintendent for approval. And then there's some other items that are pretty important that we would need beforehand, and they're listed here. Sending out the request to the attorney. You know, we ask you every year for a couple questions related to fraud. We'll send them to you via email, and please feel free to send them back to us, whether they're mail, whether they're email, uploaded through our portal. Then of course there's the travel testing. So there's a couple different items that we look out for that. And then also SEMI. Most of you get a SEMI waiver and don't participate in the program. So we just need to see that county superintendent letter. And then here we have specific items per fund. The general fund, that final state aid payment notice, because we don't have access to the same things you do in homeroom. And then the additional funds that you'll be getting for non-public transportation and extraordinary aid, depending on when that's coming out. I'm not sure whether those have been released yet. And then for special revenue, while we do have some access to the eWIC system, sometimes we don't have the same exact access you do. So if you could provide us these items, that would be very helpful. The one that I don't see listed here is the Chapter 192, 193, the non-public information. I know sometimes that's not available right away, but we like to make sure that we're in agreement with what that says, because sometimes we'll note differences on some of the earlier audits. And then the TPF reimbursement voucher. I know that some people like to wait until we come in to submit that to the state, but feel free to send that over to us if you're a later audit, and we'd be happy to look at that for you so you can get that in. And then we have the capital projects fund. Some of you still might have some ROD or SDA grants that finalizing. So if you have filed them during fiscal year 20, we would need a copy. And then we're also required for the capital reserve to check and see the list of projects in the long-range facility plan, that local share matches up with the amount that you have in capital reserve or exceeds it. And then some of the things we might not be able to get to do when we're coming out for the summer testing for payroll is if you have any payroll accruals, if you are not closed out when we come in, we need the details of that. And then a bigger thing that you prepare for us is the compensated absences analysis. If you have time, you might want to get started on that now. Sometimes that is quite a project. We need a detail by employee and by function, because we need that when we do the conversion for the district-wide statements. And then an explanation for an increase and a decrease in gross payroll between last year and this year. And then if, whatever software, whether it's Excel or QuickBooks or Quicken for some of those other accounts we would need, whether that's flexible spending or unemployment, payroll agency account. And then the food service, hopefully we can get most of that done during the summer, but if not, we would need it during the audit phase.
Heidi, we just have one question from the previous section.
Okay.
The question is, due to limited staff in offices to confirm receipt of items ordered, we have a large number of open POs for this time of year. Any suggestions?
So they want to make a payment. They're concerned about making a payment without the receipt?
No, I think they're asking, there are more encumbrances than there typically would be. So they're going to roll forward to next year. It's not a problem.
I guess that's to be expected. I mean, hopefully some of these are smaller items. I mean, and they're not material and wouldn't be something, honestly, that we'd probably be looking at anyway. So if you have specific questions, maybe on specific purchase orders, larger ones, check with the respective partner and in charge, and we'll be accommodating.
Right, I think it would be either the accommodation, the combination of whether they be reported as encumbrances as of June 30th or actual accounts payable as of June 30th. If you just haven't had time to get through everything, yes, we started receiving some of those calls because there's limited staff in the business offices. So probably the best bet for a client is to reach out to your partner, and they can help guide you through what they think is the best answer for your specific vouchers that you might still have open.
I mean, something like for accounts payable, all salaries and accounts payable. If you had any tuition contract for students attending those private schools, they would be considered accounts payable.
And I think I received a question yesterday about IEPs and work done on the IEPs that just didn't get finished in this period of time. And probably won't be finished during June, but will be finished obviously by the end of the summer. So yeah, there's a lot of those purchase orders and things of those nature that are sitting out there just based on experience of what's going on right now in limited staff.
So the follow-up to that question was they want to make payment without receipt, and we definitely do not do that. There's no problem having a purchase order roll to next year. But I would not make a payment without the receipt being confirmed. And again, we can talk about that individually to help you out, make decision. Okay, so Heidi, were you finished with this section, or?
I think it continues on the next page. I just wanted to touch on one or two other things.
Okay.
So one of them is fixed assets. If you're not doing it in-house, please reach out to the provider, the appraisal company. I don't know if they normally come on site, if they're willing or you're willing to have them on site. So I think probably the easiest thing is if you could just put together an additions and deletions listing for them and submit that to them as soon as possible. That's what we would recommend. And then these are just some items we need for the conversion in GASB 34. And then with respect to long-term liabilities or debt, please provide us with any capital leases you might have entered into during the year. And then the final item is other enterprise funds. Some districts have other enterprise funds. It could be like a latchkey or aftercare program. So we just need the associated records and have those closed out. Thank you.
So we weren't really sure how you're all doing in your offices, if you've just been crazy busy. I know from my own perspective, I feel like I'm working 12 to 15 hours a day and accomplishing 7 or 8 hours of work. Totally get it. It's been very exaggerated during these 3 months. So we would like for you to communicate with us and the in charge in terms of what you see your work schedule being, because with those things that Heidi just explained we need for the audit, our objective is always to be able to write the financials so that you have them to review. In order to write the financials, we have to have those fixed assets. I know we hound and hound and hound every year about fixed assets and compensated absences. Absolutely, positively, we'll work with you to make decisions to get them done up front so that we can get those financials as complete as we can so that you have a draft. That is very important to us. And so, seems like, you know, we tried to take this list, and again, Mon, I think this list was geared towards a particular software vendor. We do have individual lists for each client, but this is certainly a guide, and the in-charges will be sending that list out to you. We broke it down into sections because in our discussion, we said we're going to have the summer phase trying to get audit testing done. Then we're going to go into the financial mode, and it's just become more and more critical that we have the information that affects the numbers. So I got the post-audit portion, which is small, but we said we don't want you out there chasing the information for J16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 if we're waiting for the fixed asset numbers. That is critical. So we put a few things to the end saying we can get these after the fact. It's really not a lot of stuff. So I guess what it boils down to is we need everything. But there are some stat schedules. You know, when the financials are written, we will put the tables of financial information in the MD&A for you. And typically, you know, unless you're feeling differently, we would say, you know, the assets and liabilities changed or net position changed. And we put that information in for you, and then you always have the ability to amend it in any way, shape, or form that you want. But there are certain sections in the MD&A. So again, we don't know if and when you have downtime, but when you do, there are sections in the MD&A. Highlights for the year usually comes from the superintendent's office or whatever you want to talk about. The transmittal letter, the stats section, the organization chart, roster of officials, and the consultants. So again, we tried to break it down into first phase, second phase, and this is post-audit or late audit is the last phase, third phase.
I just want to add to that, I'm sure most of you know that we have a secured Dropbox called ShareFile where you can upload anything electronic that you can upload to us. And we like recommending you to use that because it's secured. So if you ever have to send us any sensitive information like payroll information, that should be sent through there, not through emails. And also, the Dropbox doesn't have any data limits, unlike our email, which has a 10 megabyte limit. So sometimes if you send us stuff that's over the limit and we don't get it, we don't even know that we didn't get it. So I would recommend that to use our Dropbox, and it's very easy. You just go on our, Nisivoccia.com, and it's right at the top center, and you just click upload file, and then you just fill in your information, and then select the person that you want to send the files to. And you can, save all the files in one folder, and then just drag all the files at one time into the Dropbox instead of, sending multiple emails or uploading multiple times.
I think we had a raised hand, so would that
Yep.
person please ask a question? Catherine?
Yes, actually, it wasn't a question. I really have to compliment you on that Dropbox. Last year, I think it was last year we started using it. I felt like I was in the audience at Oprah Winfrey and she just gave me a house because that made everything so much easier. We saved everything in a folder and then we shot it over to the auditors. And we didn't have pile. Oh, I get so excited. I know people think I'm crazy, but that just made my day. And I'm looking forward to using it again. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Welcome.
You're welcome. I believe all of you received your audit from our secure servers last year because we sent everything to you and all of the attachments via the secure server. So it kind of is nice that we can go back and forth and yeah, and we like that it is a secure, it's encrypted, it needs passwords. So it gives us that level of protection for especially sensitive information. So by all means, you know, most of our staff at this point, and especially since we've been remote, it's become a daily usage for us. So you can upload, and what's nice about it is you can either upload things as you go along, or like Mon said, you can just create a big folder on your file system and then just upload the whole folder all at once. It actually is quite helpful. And we get notification and we can download the information. So not having a size limit is really helpful for that.
And I know in prior years, we've gotten access to certain clients to their accounting software. And I think in most districts, it might just be a matter of talking to your IT department or IT, department heads to let them know that, hey, this is what we're trying to do, any way we can do it. And I think most of them is just through a VPN access. I know sometimes we provide a laptop on site so we can run additional reports if we need to. So, if you can take the initiative and talk to your IT department and see about the ways of us getting access, that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Now, I know Mon had said the question, we love the electronic age. Kathy, I get as excited about it as you do. But in terms of us having access and being able to go into your system on a limited basis, we still need you to generate certain reports because we are not users of the system. And I would say that our staff and our in charges are quite talented and technologically proficient, and they probably could do that, but I think it would slow us down. So when we have a number of reports that we need from you, it's better that you generate those reports and then upload them rather than just rely on the fact that we're going to have access to a sea of information. So should we ask for any questions in this portion before we go into other topics that we just, anybody have any questions or comments they want to make with regard to?
If not, Kath, I think we have a polling question that we want to launch. It's about summer testing.
Okay. Looking good. Still have 40 people. Well, this is really awesome results.
Yeah, this is very good for us because it will be very different than we've probably done in the past, in that you know, we might start and then go and work on another client and come back to finish your financial portion of the audit. But this will be a big help for us when we're doing our scheduling and trying to navigate.
Okay, now we want to say at this point too, our plan is to do this testing, and I know there are clients that have always been ready and asked us to come in July and August to get the whole report done. That's why we're doing the polling. We need to manage a whole mass of school audits, and so we will be doing that. And so we've spoken to our in-charges, and they said, you know, if we have time available, of course we're going to put audits in if we can. We just need to get through the testing phase, and then I'll just remind you that for us and efficiency, it's better that we have less touches, but then we have, you know, 75 to 80 clients that we have to accommodate. So I'm sure we'll get through it. I've said that when we do schedule our audits, that we've never had anybody displeased with the result. So we are very committed to working with each and every one of you, and we will work around your parameters. It's just for us to plan the audit of 75 to 80 schools. We need your feedback. And so nothing's a definite yes or a definite no. We're working with you throughout the whole process. So thank you. Move into the next phase. I guess that's Heidi.
Okay, so we will not present, and I saw there was a question that came up about the CARES Act. Sorry, we're not an expert on this yet. We have minimal knowledge of it. I do know, and we did send out a polling question about how many people thought that they would be spending the money this year as opposed to the other years, because I think you can spend that money into 2021 or 2022. But I have spoken with some of my clients about what they're going to spend their money on. And some of them have talked about technology. I see it as, you know, you could spend the money some this year, some next year, and probably some into the third year. And it's kind of like, almost like a ROD grant that will roll over into the next year. And what you haven't spent in the previous year, you would add that in as a current year grant. If there's any specific questions, and we'd be happy. We were hoping that we would get some feedback from you on this about how you're spending the money, how you're thinking of spending the money. So we want to just open this up to like a Q&A right now.
We do have a question. The question's asking, could we just put it all in the 20 to 21 budget?
That's my understanding, that, you know, you have the ability, you don't have to spend it spread out. My understanding is you could probably spend it all this year. You could spend it all the next year. So I think that's, to the best of my knowledge, that's certainly allowable.
I guess for this polling question, just give us, if you are, I think we're more looking for those if you're spending it in both years, if you could answer it probably as a yes, so that we know what we're getting, so that we're aware of it. And I guess the question I was having when we were starting to put this together was, of those people who were spending it in the current year and who are answering yes, would you mind participating or allowing us to unmute you as to what you're spending that on, so that we can kind of familiarize ourselves as to what people are utilizing the money for the CARES during this so far now.
So it looks like we have quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, there's 27 people who are planning on spending it so far. 40% of you are planning on spending it in, I guess, fiscal year 20. So exactly what are your types of spending that you're spending those items on?
So Catherine, you had raised your hand, so please speak.
Sorry, I feel like I've been a little bit verbose today. But the key thing that one of our biggest needs in our district is that we have a number of disenfranchised students that are in remote areas. And so connectivity for their internet so that they can participate in virtual learning. That's one of our biggest areas, to buy hotspots for some of them. And then, other areas we can do in the more community downtown areas, we're spending a little less to put them on a Cablevision plan. So that's one of our big areas.
I've heard of people buying like Chromebooks for all the students. Expanding it to different grades. That's what some of my clients have talked about. I did see a question about whether the funds are going to be provided on a reimbursement basis. I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm assuming.
Yep. And
Sorry, go ahead.
the nature of the question too was to forecast who's going to have, a federal single audit who may not have had a federal single audit without the CARES Act money. So that was another consideration.
We have another raised hand.
Okay. So Melissa, would you like to say something?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we got about $400,000 in change, and about $100,000 of that is going to our non-public schools, and so we're left with about $350,000 approximately. We're spending that on additional Chromebooks for students to do remote learning, some hotspots because we have some low-income students that don't have access to internet. And we are also spending the majority of the money on cleaning and sanitizing products and nursing supplies like masks, gloves, PPE, that type of thing. Some of our non-publics are doing a combination of remote learning devices, whether that be Chromebooks or laptops, and sanitizing equipment. So that is primarily what we're spending the funds on. And because we just submitted the grant this week, and I don't intend to book it on my records this school year, but I will be booking it as of July 1, because I still have to get approval. Typically when you do a grant through eWig, you get the email saying it's been substantially approved and you can start, encumbering them funds. We did not get an email like that when we submitted the grant for this. So I'm leery of spending the money until I get approval of the grant application.
Lauren.
And then I think Rita had a question about, do we know how the funds will be coming in, whether they will be reimbursement basis or another basis? I believe they are reimbursement basis, but I'm not sure. Heidi, do you know for sure?
No, that's what I was saying. I'm not sure. I would assume they are, but
I've heard both, that you can ask for the funds and then submit your expenditures, but I've also have other districts I know that are doing it, because I believe it's coming through eWig from a seminar I've sat on, that I believe that it will be a reimbursement through your eWig system, as with your other grants.
so
I think it's very important too that no matter when you're spending the money or or what type of basis they're sending you the money, whether it's upfront or reimbursement basis, just make sure that you keep track of all these expenses separately, and then if you happen to have salaries charged, make sure you have timesheet support, because we all know how the state and the feds operate. They say here's your money, but then they don't give you guidance until months later when you've already spent that money. So just make sure you have good support and keep track of it separately, because I can just foresee 2-3 years down the line the state's going to come in and audit your CARES expense.
Yeah, I would think that these, just like the ARA money was, would be more susceptible to auditing by either the state or the federal government. So I would just make sure everything is well documented and supported.
We have one question. Do you have a preference as to when we spend the funds? We are purchasing technology. The order could be placed now. The district is ready. However, it could be held off until next year. Any thoughts?
As long as it's within the allowable window when you can spend the funds, I think you should spend the money when it's best for you. If you need to spend them, if this year to ensure that those items will be here for school, then going ahead and do that, as long as, DOE, whatever window that they provided that said that was the allowable grant period, I'm not sure whether it's going to be before. I believe the application date was around the 18th, the end submission date. So as long as you're within that window, that's what we would be looking for, and you should be fine.
Do you have any more questions?
Or any others? I think there was a couple on the tech program, I guess on lease purchases for large tech purposes with care funds that provide to use care funds for other issues. And then also with the FEMA guidance, I guess there's a trigger for of 131,000 that looking to, are there any districts that are looking to stay below that figure to trigger that to avoid the audit trigger, or should you just apply for the full amount of your grant? Does anyone know about that trigger? I don't, but.
Who's afraid of an audit? Just keep
exactly. I look at it as, my answer is, if that's all it's going to be, is you'll entitled to more money and it just adds a little more oversight. More money is probably the better option, and take the oversight of an audit versus staying below the radar and taking some money and having to spend your own funds on something just to trigger the audit, not to trigger the audit.
Okay. Good with questions?
I think that answers the questions. Is there any other, do we have a hand up, Michaela?
Yes, we do. You go ahead and ask your question, Melissa.
Yes. Has anybody heard anything as to what FEMA is going to actually fund with their FEMA grants? Because I listened to one of their webinars on the grant, and it wasn't really clear as to what they're willing to let a school district spend money on and be reimbursed by them. We have some low-income students, and our food service is running like right into the red because we are providing meals to so many people and students right now since we shut down. I was wondering if you had heard if anybody was willing to submit to FEMA for the food service loss that and by loss I'm saying what we are going to have to pay our food service management company for, number one, their fee and the cost of them preparing the meals, obviously. Because if we had been in a normal situation and just shut down, I would have no expenses for food service. But because we are still offering meals, I do have expenses for food service. And I was wondering, beyond the reimbursement, obviously, from the Department of Agriculture, would I be able to claim that loss for a FEMA?
I think it's a good idea. I don't know if it would be permissible or not. And so the question was raised, if we have the ability to spend the money now, spend it now. The downside of that is not knowing, what you're going to be able to charge the grant. So today is the 17th. I don't know if we'll be able to find more information before you close your books for the year. but it would seem to make sense to me. I'm sure some of you, when we were saying, if you have the opportunity to take the federal funds, go ahead and take them. Don't worry about the audit. But the flip side of that is sometimes the effort does exceed the monetary benefit. So you've all been in your chairs. Those of you who don't have a lot of experience, please reach out to us so that we can interact with you and help you make those decisions. So we
And
just don't have an answer yet, Melissa.
Yeah, and it looks
Okay.
like Tim also posted something in our Q&A that I guess Hunterdon and Warren County ASBO is now working on establishing a shared Google Doc that will allow all uses and disuse and those things denied by FEMA. So hopefully, you know, maybe that's something we can, the various ASBOs could start to work towards, or make that live across all ASBOs if people are already finding what's being denied or what's being approved, and you start with a comprehensive list. I think that's a great idea. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
Anybody else have any CARES comments or questions before we move?
Yeah. And then I guess Rita made a comment that NJS will send out a link on what would be covered by FEMA on 6/15, and that food service was not on that list.
Mm. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So maybe you want to lead us on procurement issues?
Well, I know we had a question on procurement, and I guess maybe what our thoughts were on the fact that the stipends had to be paid for the coaches. We wanted to say overall with respect to procurement, we know that at least at first there was very little guidance from the Department of Education on this. So we will certainly be flexible. We understand that. We know that you used your best judgment, you know, whether it was checking with your attorney or, you know, with your county DA. So we're not looking to find things that are problems with procurement when we're doing our audit testing. And we know you did the very best.
So are we asking if there are any questions relating to procurement that anybody has for us?
I think someone had a question about like what our thoughts were on the coaching stipends, and I thought that, you know, it was pretty, you know, like whatever your viewpoints were on that, it seemed like those were supposed to be paid. I mean, I know that there's been some questions about what to do with the aid and lieu money too. You know, if anybody wants to share their thoughts on that, for everyone in the group. So we'd be happy to, I can't tell exactly who the 3 participants were. Maybe Michaela knows, who raised their hands.
Yep. 1 second. Catherine, you could go ahead and ask your question.
I'll make it fast. I just had a response. So what we're doing is with our coaching for the fall, in the board resolution that we approved, we list the following coaching stipends, blah, blah, blah. We've attached the table of salaries, and then we put in bold and asterisk within the resolution stating that that is if the sports go forward and the work is required. So it's kind of a, you know, caveat. And then if we do any other paperwork subsequent to that resolution, we're including the same information that we're approving these salaries if the sports go forward. And we're doing that with our transportation contracts too. Any contracts that we bid out for and sign, it's if transportation occurs. So a lot of the people in our county are doing that. Just embed that so that going forward, we never could have anticipated what happened in the spring. But now that we know that we could be left holding a bag for work that isn't going to be done, we're, you know, preparing for that with that statement.
Okay.
And we did have a comment from one of our attendees that their district attorney advised that the aid in lieu reimbursements are only going to be reimbursed up to the 18th of March, and that the stipends for fiscal year 21 were not approved as advised by the attorney. So with respect to procurement issues, we defer to your attorney's advice as well, because we are certainly not experts on this topic. So was there anybody else that wanted to comment?
Yes, we have a couple more raised hands. Super. William, you could go ahead and ask your question.
Actually, I was just going to comment on the procurement issue as far as coaches and aid in lieu. For coaches, we worked with our district attorney to potentially pass a resolution. We're a little bit conflicted right now with our Teachers Association, but to appoint them and to potentially unappoint them if the season is canceled, but also to pay them a prorated share of the season if the season happens to be canceled mid-season. As far as aid in lieu goes, I'm only paying them the prorated share, but I'm keeping the purchase order open just in case I receive guidance from the state that tells me I need to provide them the full amount. So this way I don't have to worry about spending 2021 funds somewhere down the road for the remainder of my aid in lieu payments.
I had another one of my clients who's doing the same thing with the aid in lieu that you are doing, Bill.
Yeah, I just want to protect ourselves.
Sure.
And then one more raised hand. Tim, you could go ahead.
There we go. So in Hackettstown, very similar with the aid in lieu, we prorated it. I figured out the calculation. I think I even added 5 additional days because I didn't want somebody coming back from a private school saying, well, we were off this day, so you missed it by 2 days. I added 5 additional days just to be on the safe side, prorated it, had the board pass a resolution, put the copy of the extract of the resolution in each check we mailed out. We're keeping the purchase order open and we're rolling it over until the next year in case Trent decides to change their mind at the end of the school year.
Thank you, everybody, for weighing in and for your input.
With that, if anyone has any topics they would like us to talk about, otherwise we wanted to give you those summertime reminders that, you need to send your board secretaries and treasurer reports into the county by August 1st.
And they don't have to be perfect, it's just a kind of a check-off thing to say that they've received them, so it doesn't have to be finalized, it doesn't have to be approved by your board. Just please send them down. It's something that the state requires us to check and make sure that it's timely.
So I think later on then we have the TPAF FICA reimbursement form, and that's September 30th, October 1st. Time frame. Is there anything that we have sooner than that other than doing reserve resolutions for reserves this month? It's now the 17th, so don't know if you have meetings left until June 30th, but you need to authorize those during this month by June 30th.
And make sure to review your cumulative transfer report, and if anything that's over the thresholds that the state dictates, then please make sure that you get the approval from your county office.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Any comments by the panel?
The only thing I know, we talked about making sure you do your transfers to your reserves by the end of June. I just had a question that I actually wanted to put out to the group. Did anyone put any money into that emergency reserve? I know NJ Asbo sent out an email, saying that you could utilize those, and I'm just curious if anyone chose to or is choosing to establish or put funds into that emergency reserve. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, before we get an answer, I'll just chime in on that. I had somebody who said, can we put money into the emergency reserve? And I said, sure you can, but you know what? Those decisions, you get the board approval for up to some certain amount. And you don't make the final decision until you're reviewing the audit numbers with us. So in this particular district that asked me, I said, whatever amount of money you say you can deposit into the emergency reserve for COVID expenses, don't lessen the amount you can put in cap reserve, because in a month or two, as we're finalizing the financials and you're making those final decisions, you need to have that flexibility.
And from what we heard from the state, the only way that you can withdraw money from the emergency reserve for, I guess, any COVID-19 related expenses would be with commissioner approval. So I don't know how successful district will be, because we've been in situations where we think it's emergencies, where it's, Superstorm Sandy or any of the other natural disasters we had, and the state has said that those don't qualify as emergency reserve expense. So I would just be cautious because of that, whether you are going to be able to take money out.
Okay, and then another piggyback comment that I have to that is most districts have an add-on or adjustment to their 2% for extraordinary aid and non-public transportation aid that you didn't budget and that you receive in the fiscal year. So, the board has the discretion to appropriate those funds the subsequent year. So if you were going to have some COVID-related costs that would transfer into the 2021 year, you could appropriate funds there rather than utilizing an emergency reserve. So,
Yeah, are we done with all our polling questions? I just want to make sure.
We have one more.
We have one more polling question, I believe.
Do we want to do that now?
Sure, let's remote before we.
love watching these take off.
I know. It's an easy question. I think everybody knows their software, so.
Yeah. And it's really helpful for us to have these results in a polling question so that we can access the data and look at it rather than doing everything by our lists, and just so much easier.
Looks like CDK is the winner.
I know. Well, we still only have 85% of our vote, so let's get some more. I'm sure there's probably, our Nisivoccia people that are probably on the call. Slot yourself in other, so.
Okay.
All right.
It's probably going to be it.
Which is great, knowing that, and like we said, we're trying to work with these software vendors. CDK has been so far the one that I've worked with, and both Norman has offered, like I said, to give us the software program. So once you close, you are actually able to provide us with a backup, which then gives us all of the information. So that's always a possibility of us utilizing it. So, and we are working with like what we assumed was the big three. So it sounds like we're on that same path of CDK, systems, and CSI. Edmonds, we already can remote access into because we utilize it for our municipalities. And then, and the other, I'm assuming that falls in with R&L, with Alio, and there's a few others that are out there. So thank you.
Sure, I understand.
Yep. Do we have any other questions? I think we have a question. Nice, Mike. Mike wants to know if we can stop the emails offering to help us reopen. I wish we could.
Yeah.
We're getting them all too, so.
All right, so it was my job
And there's Doug. He started with lunch and wants to end with lunch.
Yeah, it's only 11:15, Doug. So anyway, I do hope that we can get this back to our live meeting where we can interface with each other. I miss seeing the faces. So again, the walk away is, yeah, the auditors are a big pain in the neck and we still want to have everything that we can possibly have. And we're just asking you very emphatically to help us be a little more prepared this year so that we can get through this. And again, our goal is always to get you a report that you can share with your board. And then we'll be waiting. And I believe, Heidi, that we can expect that there will be some delay in the GASB information for pension and OPEB as it relates to schools. Do you want to say anything there?
Well, I mean, the good news is they did release the 68 reports already. The 75 report, I think, supposedly is supposed to be released over the summer. The only piece that I'm wondering that we might have a problem with is the on behalf payments. And the problem with the on behalf payments is it affects like the whole report, you know, even the schedule you're most interested in, which is C1. I mean, it has no net effect, but usually that's dependent on what amount of money they're putting into the pension system for the year. And since the year has been extended to the end, you know, to September 30th, are they not going to have that number available until September 30th? We know that the governor's going to be giving, you know, another address sometime later on. So that might be maybe the latest thing we would get. So that's what we know at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time and attention.
Yes.
We know it's going to be a different year, but we've got your back and we're pretty confident that you have ours. So thank you for always working together with us.
Yes. Thank you very much and joining us in this new forum. Hopefully, we'll, like Kathy says, we'll be back in live form soon.
Yeah, so each of you will receive a communication from the in-charge. We're hoping as soon as possible, but they will be reaching out for the testing that we can send our staff to do. So bear with us, we will be in touch.
And as you're moving through the closeout process, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions and help you all that we can.
Thank you.
And as we navigate through this new, you know, remote auditing, any feedback, any suggestions that you can make to make both our lives easier, please, we welcome any all feedback.
Yep. Because you're not only helping one client, you're helping 75 to 80 clients. So you know, one little thing could facilitate a magnitude of different school districts. So thank you for always sharing.
So I guess also if you would let Michaela know if you need CPA, CPE credit, because then we would get you a certificate.
Yep.
Yep, we'll send out an email after this, so there will be a survey that you just fill out and let us know if you need the credit.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your June. And we'll be talking to you.
Great. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.